Welcome to another episode of the Wild Way podcast, where we believe every man should be inspired to live with eternal purpose every day. And if we can find our why, we will find our way. We'll figure out the little things in life. And we wanted to start us off with an awesome interview because there's guys that have gone ahead of us, and we need to learn from the guys that have gone before us and to glean from their wisdom, glean from their experience, and then really figure out how can we take the next steps forward practically as growing in men, finding our purpose, and figuring out what's holding us back, and then just taking that next step. And so we wanted to start with a bang. And when you say bang, there is only one name that comes to mind at the forefront. It is our very own Jeremy Moore. Let's go. And Jeremy.
Not the bang.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, first of all, going before you guys, I made me sound old, okay?
Well, you know, not too far before.
Yeah. All right, gotcha.
But enough to learn from. That's for sure. Yeah. But man, we, you've impacted both of our lives in a pretty significant way over the past decade for me.
3 years for me.
Yeah, 3 years for Charles. So, definitely we've had the benefit of being under your leadership, being around you as a man, just gleaning from you in the day in, day out moments. So super excited. And man, why don't you just take us back, Jeremy, of where does Jeremy Moore begin and who are you and what do you do?
Well, that was very encouraging. Thank you guys. Affirmation is a big gift for me. So
don't worry, we're going to butter you up this whole time.
My wife's going to love it when I come home later.
You're going to be coming home
it's going to be way too big.
You're not going to ask for another compliment for a week.
Oh my goodness. Well, you guys know we serve the same place, same community. So I'm on staff here at Freedom, but you guys want to know where I started from, my humble beginnings?
So for people that don't know you, what do you do now? Gotcha. And where do you come from?
So I'm on the pastoral team at Freedom Church, Philadelphia. In our second location, I lead our Cherry Hill location. I'm also the creative director at Freedom Church. So that just means whatever has to happen
creatively
comes Freedom Church.
Hey, Jeremy, figure this out.
Yes, exactly. The experience of Freedom Church, I get to kind of cultivate and own, and under Pastor Gabe's, leadership, and so that's a big job, but I love it. I've been doing that for 4 years, and other than that, I'm a husband to Elizabeth and 2 daughters, Luciana and Farah. And so, what you say?
Girl dad.
Girl dad. That's me, man, for sure. And yeah, that's kind of me in a quick nutshell.
Okay, that's where you're at now.
Yeah.
Well, take us back. We want to hear the genesis because we know the rock star that you are now.
Okay.
Right? Everything you touch turns to gold.
Everything.
What don't you do? You play in conferences.
He sings.
You
He
sing.
writes original music. He dances.
Come on, guys.
He leads hundreds of people on a weekly basis.
My man throws down in the kitchen.
Yeah. What don't you do, Jeremy?
Oh, man.
So I think
wow. Mom, you watching this?
Liz, are you watching it? But what's really helpful is just to see the trajectory, right? You weren't always the man you are today. There's some really key things that happen in your life to become the man that you are today. So that's really what we want to learn from and benefit from your experience.
Well, I'm originally from North Carolina, humble beginnings. I'm from the country.
Come on.
When people ask me where I'm from, I always say I'm from, North Raleigh. But,
okay.
I'm from a little town.
Yeah.
Called Butner.
What's
literally has butt in the name.
Butner?
Butner.
So you're starting off at a good...
Yes, strong. It's a strong place. There's a large correctional facility in Butner.
Okay.
There's also a large mental health facility, one of the largest.
2 for 2.
So it's like if you got issues, that's where I come from.
Yeah. Do you have a minor league baseball team? Right, like that's how you know.
I come from the place of issues. Okay, this is that'll preach. Man, and that's where my family's from. Literally, generations of my family are from the Granville and Wake County area of North Carolina. Cool. So that's where my village is. That's where I grew up. I'm a twin.
Yes.
I am the youngest of 3 in my household, but 4 altogether. My dad had an older daughter. So I have a half sister I didn't grow up with her, but I grew up in a fun environment. My dad's one of 10 siblings. My mom's one of 5, and they're both at the older. My mom's the oldest. My dad's the second oldest, and
lots of cousins.
Lots of cousins, and my parents were we were the house. My parents were, you couldn't tell now with my mom. She's very much more like, dainty Southern
Subdued.
belle lady. But back in the day, the Morehouse was the party house. Okay,
It was popular at the Morehouse.
we literally
I can
had
tell.
like
I can
a
tell.
record, the record of the week, whatever it was like hanging on the back wall. Like music always going, parties all the time. My dad, he was a chef. He cooked, and that I grew up, the house where there was always a fish fry, some plate to come get at a party. And, so that's kind of how I grew up. My parents were kind of the life of the party. And now looking back at it, it was really my dad. He could suck up the energy in the room, and everybody
he could
wanted
work
to be
the
around.
room. So that's where
him.
you get it from. 'Cause
Apparently,
Jeremy, you can work a room.
Absolutely.
Bro,
Absolutely.
talk about a dynamic changer. Like, there is you have to be tone deaf if you know when Jeremy Warren walks in the room. I mean, like the volume goes up 10 decibels.
Oh, man.
The fun level.
Strobe lights just start.
It's like for all of our very proper and like keep things in a box kind of people, you are their worst nightmare.
That is
because
hilarious.
you immediately bring the chaos and the fun to
Man,
it.
it's so interesting though, because in my family, I am the more observant one.
Oh man.
Really?
Oh, bro. The conservative quiet little brother.
Especially growing up, I had a lot of insecurities growing up as a kid, and particularly it always felt a little different than my family. And so for me, being fully expressive of who I am, I never felt like I could do that with my family. So
Do you think that comes from being a younger child or a twin, or kind of how to differentiate yourself?
I mean, I have a family, a very loud, judgmental Southern family.
Call it what it is, man. It is what it is.
And so, it's just the things that I love, the things that I didn't love that my family loved. I grew up not knowing, just really struggling for identity.
Yeah.
And so who I was, I didn't feel like I could really even figure that out around my family, but I love my family.
Yeah.
They're amazing. And now it's a totally different ballgame. I go home and it's, I
All
cut
bets
up,
are off.
Jeremy gonna cut up, so
Cut me a steak.
but yeah, so I grew up with both my parents. They were married. My mom was 26 when she had me and my brother, and my dad was 29.
Okay.
And I mean, I grew up with both of them working a lot. My dad worked all types of shifts, and then he worked at home. My dad was he built our house, parts of our house, that's still there today. The whole back half of our house is my dad built with his bare hands, and used to cook on the weekends. He worked as, a cook at a hotel. He used to bring home cookies when you were at second shift, and mom used to let us stay up and wait for him to come home. Like, that's the kind of quality. I grew up with being like, this is my family. It's a really fun family. I didn't really know all the struggles that were going on in my family at a young age, but I grew up feeling very sheltered and taken care of, and it wasn't until I was 9, basically, when I lost my dad to suicide. Yeah. Which was a big deal. I really didn't find out until I was 13 or so, of everything that was going on in my family. Though I knew at the time of his death that it was suicide. But yeah, man, that kind of changed the course of my childhood experience. At a very early age, I had to grow up pretty quickly.
Yeah, man. Well, that's some heavy stuff to deal with as a little kid, even as an adult, right? And so we just appreciate you sharing that. Because
man.
A lot of the guys that we're around have some pretty significant struggles, and so you mentioned that you had some, just kind of trying to find your identity when you're younger, and then your dad passes away, and so how did that affect you as a kid growing up, and how did that kind of linger in your soul?
Bro. There's so many factors. The biggest thing is for my dad, for us, what we knew of my dad, he was our hero, and wherever we went, we were Thomas boys. Like, that's who we were, and so having that kind of snuffed out at a very early age was very hard for me, and in particular, once I remember being in school. I mean, kids are ruthless. Yeah. But I remember being in school and on the bus, and I remember this one kid's picking on me. I won't say his name. I remember his name, but I won't say his name on this just in case, because
you never know.
He's a pastor now. And he's redeemed, but back then,
I hope there's forgiveness in your heart now.
Seriously, no, it is. And that was when I found out that the Lord has met him. I was like, God does redeem. Okay?
Lucky he met him before I did.
Exactly. Exactly.
There's some people you're thankful God met before you did.
But I remember the what he launched at me that one day. I mean, it was like something stupid. Like we were fighting over. I think I may have called him dumb or something, and he was like, well, at least my dad didn't kill himself, and as if it was, I grew up thinking that it was abnormal. Yeah. That like my experience is just something to be ashamed of, and that it was just like a thing on my back. And then I think part of that too with my brother, from the exterior, was a lot like my dad. Yeah. More so, even though we're twins, we're fraternal, and we do look alike. Exactly. We got strong genes, but we are fraternal. Almost identical. But I mean, listen, we're not.
I can't tell them apart.
Except for the goatee, there's no way.
Well, always as a twin, you're fighting for identity. Yeah. But I think trying to latch on to what people are expecting of you, and I think everybody expected my brother to be like my dad. Mm-hmm. But I don't think anyone knew what to expect from me, and so I really, really wrestled with who am I, and parts of me just felt like I hated my dad for a long time. Like I wanted to be nothing like him, so I thought. For 10 years post, from the ages of 9 to 19, I was tormented in my sleep. And so I share that a lot for people, because I think there's a lot of people who get oppressed by things and that they don't know how they come on them. But for me, it was, spending days at a funeral home, seeing my dad in a casket. And I remember every time I went to sleep, I literally had to spread my legs out over my twin bed. Never wanted a larger bed than a twin, because I wanted to because if I did not stretch my legs out, my dad would basically slide up beside me, like the corpse of him, and like in my sleep, and it was torment after torment and night after night. And so I kind of went through, like, I really wanted to be as far removed from who my dad was as a person, as an energy, as everything about it was like, whatever I can do to really be separate from that as an identity was a big thing. But outside of that, I didn't know who I was. Yeah. And so, I had a big struggle growing up. Yeah.
Well, how does that work then? Because I think a lot of guys, maybe they're not in your shoes, but they struggle with identity. They have some negative associations and, you could say torments with their, when it comes to thinking about their father, maybe not as visceral as yours, or spiritual in nature. But then how did that journey of both healing and coming into your own identity, what did that really look like for you in your life?
Well, for me, mine came with my story of salvation. Okay. Growing up, I threw myself into achievement. I mean, not necessarily any different from my life now, but
for different reasons, right?
But as for my mom in particular, she was a hardworking single mom and widow, and my goal in life was to make her happy. But at the time, my mom she was broken, and it was very hard to please her or get emotion from her. But I worked hard to try to not be anything like my dad, and also show her that, like, I will make her proud, that all her hard work was not in vain. So I was trying to find mentors, and no one in the Christian world or whatever. I would say I was a self-proclaimed agnostic at the age of 13, probably. I was like, God, I believe that something is out there, but is it Jesus? Is it the God of this black church that I go to every week? I don't know. I don't think so. And at the time, we became teenagers, my mom, she allowed us to not go to church if we didn't want to. So I just remember meeting a guy named Chris Green who was 4 years ahead of me in school, and he was everything that I wanted to be. When I was looking at him as an 8th grader, he was a senior, and he was student body president, senior class president, homecoming king. He was like
Starting quarterback.
Yeah, he was just like
the man.
he was just like the man. I'm like, I will be him. Yeah. I am him, and I will become him. Yeah, he doesn't know. And I remember he lived like 3 or 4 blocks from us, and he also used to cut hair, and so I used to go, get my fade down.
Man,
But he was a cool kid. He was a cool guy, but he was a Christian, and he was a Christian rapper, which I had never even experienced before. And so you go over Chris's house, you're gonna get a rap, and you'll get some Bible verses.
You was spitting some bars over there. You was spitting some bars.
But it's the first thing I learned from him was like I learned about Jesus in a real, like, non-confrontational, judgmental way. Wasn't like he was looking for me to sort of accept him, but I definitely was open and was listening, and I wanted to be him. And so there's something about his life that I'm like, man, he's so full of joy and at peace and something, and he's so focused, and he's a leader, and he has such a great influence, and everyone says positive things about him, and so I want to be him. And so I started going to his church in the summers for like a vacation Bible school, and then I would go on some Wednesdays because they had a great youth group. A lot of people go to youth group for other things other than youth group, but I went because that's where he grew up in the faith, and so I hadn't accepted Jesus really. But when I got to my senior year in high school, I had become Chris. I was student body president. I was senior class president. I was homecoming king.
There we go. Cutting hair? Did you cut hair?
Huh? No, but I do cut my own hair.
Okay, now you do. Okay.
So I always got
almost as cool as Chris.
But listen, but I got my hair cut every week. Every week. And I did have a set of shape up clippers at home all the time, just in case I couldn't make it to the barber. But I remember my mom at that time. She loved the fact that she could be independent. Me and my brother we were great leaders and responsible, and my mom would be out. She would like, I'm going to Jamaica with my girlfriends for like the weekend. Y'all be good. Yeah. Don't mess my house up, and I'll see you in a couple days. My sister was in college, and she was like, hey, she can check on you. Neighbors are watching, whatever. And I remember we had a few parties, and we were always responsible. Like I was always, me. I'm walking around like, don't you put that there? Don't you put, everybody help me clean up. And then at the party, that's I'm still the same person. That's still me. But I remember being at having one of those parties, and of course I'm drinking, but someone offered me cocaine, and which is like it never happened for me. And it was such a moment of I can't even tell you. It was such a crazy moment for me because that was one thing that I had vowed I will not be anything like my dad.
Yeah.
And here I am being like, I thought I had done everything to not put myself in positions that would even present an opportunity like this. And can I tell you immediately, in the middle of being inebriated and having like 50 people in my house that I'm not supposed to, the Lord, I like run to the back room, and like the Lord meets me in the most radical way of just like, there is really no path that you can take your own self down that won't lead to destruction. And it was my moment where the Lord was like, I thought I had everything figured out, but I don't. And I was gonna keep coming back to, will you choose me, life or death today? And I was like, Lord, I believe this is you. I can never have an experience like this. And I call Chris, he's at UNC. I call him immediately. While all these people, I just pick up the phone. I'm like, Chris. He's like, hey, what's up, bro? And I'm like, I think I just accepted Jesus. He's like, what? He's like, I'm coming home. And that was like a big shift for me, because then I realized that I'm trying to define my own life. I'm trying to create my own identity and self, and it's just it will always lead me to this space. And I felt like it was such a great catch moment for me, for the Lord, because I felt like he caught me before there was even another scenario. Because I was definitely saying no to this moment, but that doesn't mean that there wouldn't have been another one the next time, or and so that I would have fallen to. And I just remember from that moment, my life completely changed. It was like a radical, like the Jeremy that you know now started from that moment in March of 1999, which was, quite interestingly, is the anniversary of my dad's passing. And yeah, so it was just it was a big moment for me in terms of how I met God and how it took me on a course of finding out who I was.
Yeah. Jeremy, I'm so curious now, because a lot of guys get into a spot where they're trying to become somebody, right, through achievement, through success, whether they have a Chris in their life. But then you came to this moment where you had this epiphany of realizing that, man, I can't out-achieve something that feels like it's chasing me. Like there's no external identity I can create for myself. And so I know a lot of guys get to that spot and they shrink. So for you stepped into something new. For a lot of guys, they step back. What was that? What do you think is just God stepping in and helping nudge you over that? Or what was that really defining moment that you said, I need to step into this?
It's interesting you bring this up, because in the same moment, I forgot to mention this, it was, the fact that it was my dad's anniversary of his passing was a big moment in that, because this was a big moment for me to realize that it wasn't my dad that I didn't want to become. It was the demons that I had pressed him, the things that he said yes to, that he didn't have he didn't have God in his life to overcome and to say no to. And I realized that, like, I'm actually much more like him than I thought.
Yeah.
And it's just the difference between saying yes to God or saying yes to all the things that, will lead us down a destructive path. And I think for me, I think it was easy for me because I saw it.
Yeah.
I saw it firsthand growing up. I had those 9 years between the time my dad committed suicide to this moment to think through, like, not having him.
Yeah.
And the loss of him, and remembering, like, and then finding out at 13 that my dad had a substance abuse problem, and he was going through that, and he was battling depression, and I didn't even knowing all this stuff, I didn't know that, but wrestling through it now is just remembering, like, man, the difference between, like, who he was and the potential that all I knew him to be was this man who lit up a room.
Yeah.
This man who could build a house, and then also at the same time make you a 5-star meal, and then also take care of anybody who came under his care, but then could protect a family. Like, that's all I knew.
Yeah.
I remember laying on his, my head on his stomach, and like just like hearing his heartbeat. And he was gentle with us, but also firm. And then to think, man, but he was tormented, and he was depressed. And I think part of his depression was not being able to become the man that he needed to be or wanted to be for his family. And how easily that could just take you down a path of, well, why am I even here? Or, no one, or I'm just a failure. And I think about that because I am achievement oriented. Failure is a something that tries to oppress itself on me all the time, And I think, man, I'm so much more like him, except now I understand who I can be with God in my life, who, what it means to be redeemed, that it's nothing I can do of my own, which is so powerful for me in that moment. It's like, I've been trying it on my own, and now I've landed back into this spot that I'm faced with these choices that I know I don't have the power in of myself to overcome.
That's so key, man. And I think just you have such clear examples. There's such a fork in the road. You have a guy like Chris, who you've been now, because of your father's absence, saying, I want to be like this guy, rather than, not having your dad around. Yeah. And then seeing in that moment, like, holy cow, I'm going to become him. Yeah. And like, it's just so clear, like, I choose life or choose death this day. Yeah. And I think, for most people, they don't have a moment of such deep confrontation, or at least the vision of choosing the wrong isn't so clear to them.
Yeah.
So I think that's incredibly powerful. Charles, what do you want to add?
Yeah, that's, first of all, thank you for just telling us this piece of your story. It's extremely impactful.
Yeah.
Extremely impactful. I'm just curious, around that time, were there any other men in your life? So your father's out of the picture. I guess, were you like 18 at the time when, I guess maybe you grew up around Chris? Were you 18 at the time you got saved and all that?
I was 17. Yeah.
So what other men were in your life from that time, from like 9 to 17?
So, I have a lot of uncles, and my dad was one of 5 brothers, and I think I've learned a lot from my dad's brothers. 2 of them have passed away, unfortunately, since then as well. But my uncle Les, shout out to Uncle Les. He's still around. He's still I call him Uncle Dad. And he lives in this area. Even though I grew up in North Carolina, he was always the uncle that was farthest away, but came to everything. I would have like a student merit award every quarter, and he would like drive down. Wow. And so he was just that type of uncle. My grandfather, my dad's dad, who, unfortunately he also passed away a year after my dad died. And we were really extremely close to him. And then, so I've experienced a lot of mentors, and I think I've learned the value of mentorship in a way of, man, soak up what you can, because you never know the time that you have. And so between this time of 9 and 17, my uncles were really valuable to me in terms of looking for, what it meant to be a man. I will say I probably didn't. When I look back now, my uncles, I love them. But yeah, they were great, and they are. They were there, and that's the one thing I will tell you that I've learned from them, is that family over everything. Like you show up for your family, and they, without question, were that. But I've learned more post college and post moving away from my mentors than I've, in terms of what it means to be a man of faith, a man of God, and to be the leader that I am in this season. Probably.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us a little bit about them, and we'll come back to like your career and things like that.
Yeah.
Who were those other guys? What were the significant deposits that those mentors made? Because I think a lot of guys, they secretly want to have a mentor, but that's kind of a big word. They're not sure where to jump in. So what did that look like for you?
Well, I always would encourage men to just ask. If you see somebody that you're like, you see and you like their life, just be like, hey, will you mentor me? That's such an honor for a man to feel like. Most men love to be affirmed in this way, like, oh, I can influence someone else. That's a huge part of, I think, manhood, is just having a sphere of influence. And so I would always encourage men, just take that step and ask someone. But that, for me, going to college, I had a couple of campus pastors who we didn't have ENC at the time. We had it was called Waymaker, but it was still part of Every Nation. They were amazing. I think in this season of my life, Pastor David Estes, who was a pastor before Gabe, who gave the church over to Gabe, was call him my godfather, basically. He is the person who challenged me, who called me out, who when I went into the season of accepting correction and accountability, he was.
That's a major step.
That's maybe a different podcast.
Let's be real. Like they're basically a warm body until you start accepting correction, right?
Exactly.
Mentors aren't there to tell you suck.
Yes.
They're like, hey, I love you, but here's how you need to improve.
But when we see that in the Bible, I feel like Jesus and the disciples, when I read some of those stories, I'm like, Jesus, what he's really saying, like, man, you have little faith. We're really saying, like, dude,
what's up, bro?
Again? Really? No faith again? Like, that's how
I thought we've been over this one.
Right. But those were hard lessons for the disciples to learn. But I feel like when you're in this relationship where you're accepting accountability, doesn't mean it's going to be sunflowers and rainbows. No. It's hard truths to accept. But you got to be like, yes, I want to be molded. I want to be fashioned. So David Estes was my guy, for sure. He was like my number one. I spent many a nights on their couch with him being like, stop being stupid. And then
Do better.
no, it's literally, yeah.
Like, this is the 5th time you've talked to us about this. You just go back to the first time I told you.
Yeah, no, it's true. And, you know, or being like, hey, I think you should take this on. Like, step into this. And otherwise, you know, other situations, I probably would have been like, who are you? You know, but for him, it was, what you say, that I will go where you lead, you know? And he was that for me. So, and I also have, you know, Pat O'Neill was another father for me, you know, may he rest in peace. I miss him so much, but he mentored me from the start of basically premarital counseling into my first years of being a husband and a father, and also told me to stop being stupid. And listen, you don't have a mentor that's telling you to stop being stupid. I tell Charles to stop being stupid all the time. So.
Honestly, as a guy who mentors a lot of other guys, the
time.
Majority of my time is spent figuring out how to politely say, don't be stupid.
So true. Yeah.
Well, Jeremy, what's really cool is, you know, you're really directly mentoring Charles right now. And like during this time of David Estes and Pat O'Neill, like I had started coming to Freedom Church.
Yeah, I remember.
And so my whole journey of actually finding Christ myself and becoming a man was almost in the sidelines, like as you're going through this too. So that's why our lives are pretty intertwined and mingled there. So it's been been
cool.
Yeah, I would say it's been cool to watch, but I had no clue what was happening. I had my head so far in the sand. I was just completely oblivious.
Billy, you've grown a lot. I'm very proud of the person.
You know, I have a lot of people look at me and say, don't be stupid. So
That's the title of this episode. Don't be stupid.
I know.
Don't be
I
stupid.
didn't think that was going to be the thing that came out of this, but I'm sure that's a clear takeaway.
Yeah. You know, and there's something that's really interesting. These are just names to a lot of people that are watching.
Yeah.
But Dave Estes and Pat O'Neill, they're both white.
Yeah.
So how is it being mentored as a black man by white men? And, you know, was there a barrier there? Was there something in a spiritual sense that was unique and imparted something to you? You know, can you speak to that?
You know, that's a very interesting question. I didn't think about it in that way. I mean, of course, I have, you know, black mentors. You know, Henry Noy for one.
Totally.
He's the one that, and in this point in my life, that I asked him directly, "Hey, will you mentor me?"
Yeah.
Just how he lives his life. There's something about it that I want to emulate in my life. But in those seasons, that's just who God had laid out. I didn't think about it. In terms of, they weren't trying to refine who I was as a black man, but just like who I was as just a man of faith and a man of character. And so in those seasons where you know, it's actually being in marriage, Pat and his wife Kathy were our premarital counselors. They walked us, you know, 6-8 months through a hard time of being like, okay, every week we keep showing up and we keep saying, yes, we still want to get married. This is, maybe this week, I don't know, man. No, we still want to get married, you know? And, and through, you know, the birth of our kids and all that stuff, they've been there. And those were the people that God had laid out. And so I never really questioned, that, you know, I think people have to visualize and see who it is that God has laid out for them, to mentor them and take them to the next level. I mean, your eyes should be out and looking for that. I would encourage every man to just have your eyes open and then just pursue them. You know, in the beginning of our premarital counseling, I wasn't as close to Pat and Kathy. It was basically Liz's choice, and I went in very begrudgingly because I'm like, they're gonna favor her, and it's not gonna be fair to me, and I'm in it to win it, you know. And so who's gonna have my back? You know, don't go into premarital counseling.
That's a great way to say something with your future wife. You're like,
Yes.
hey, I know what you're trying to do here, but I'm trying to win.
Exactly. And then Pat, of course, told me don't be stupid. So, but but when I recognized the value that Pat was in his impartation and just who he was as a husband, and just the seasons of difficulty they went through and what he learned, and the fact that he was able to share in transparency, this is how I've grown in marriage.
Yeah.
This is how I've been able to, not always be right all the time, but fight to be reconciled to my wife. And I was like, I need this man in my life. And so that was just the choice I made. I didn't think about it, whether or not they were black or white. But in this season in particular, I did pursue Henry with that thought in mind. Like I want a black man I can look up to. It doesn't negate the experiences or the relationship I still have with David Estes. We're still close, but it's, I think you have to know what you need.
Yeah.
And then go after it.
Yeah, I think just it's fair to say you could look at all three of those men and be lucky to have them as your mentor, right? There's so much to be learned from them, whether they're black or white, but there are those distinct seasons that we go through. Like in one season, you need this specific area, and another season, you need something else.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Question. So, all right. Why'd you look at me like that?
I always look at you like this.
You don't know what I'm going to ask. You don't know what I'm going to ask.
No, I don't. That's probably why I'm looking at him like this.
I'm the wild card.
From prior podcasts, we know Charles' favorite subject.
Oh, yeah.
So go ahead.
I hate it.
I love it.
Just still on mentoring. I like the points that you said. So if you're a young man who knows that you need a mentor, first of all, you have to be self-aware, knowing that you need a mentor. If you see, like, your eyes should be open. If you see someone that you are, that you want to emulate, ask them like to be your mentor. I know me, I asked you if you would be my mentor.
I remember.
Yeah. I was like, you want to be my big bro?
I was like,
I didn't say that, but
no, I remember. I still remember where we were and everything.
yeah.
Special moment.
But I'm just curious now.
You made it awkward for Charles.
I love it. I love making Charles awkward though. That's I love it. I love the way it's
It doesn't take much to make me awkward though. It does not take much. No, but I'm just curious how that has turned now. So from you being mentored, knowing what it takes to pursue a mentor, I asked you to be my mentor. Now, what is your thoughts or perspective on now being a mentor? How has that turned for you?
Well, what I've learned from the guys who mentor me is being transparent. I think the biggest thing that you can learn from your mentor are where they failed and how they've learned, and I know that may sound crazy because a lot of people look for mentors that are amazing and I want to be like them, but the reality is that you really won't know how to become like them until you see how they went through. We know this from scriptures that what makes us is not necessarily the great things about us, but it's the trials and it's the things that press us into the people that we are. And so I think for me, it makes it easy for me to say, yeah, you can follow me because I'm going to mess up. And I'm learning. And if I can be an open book and allow you to see what I'm learning and how God's shown me in these spaces, because the reality is that we're all going to probably go through some of the same, issues and same trials and the same things that press us. And, if the guy's not married, I'm pretty sure I have a lot of failures when it comes to dating and being married. That I am open book. I'm an open book in that regard. So when it comes to leadership, those are things that you just learn through adversity or just that you want to pass down. Because I don't want to see anybody I don't want anybody to go through failure that they don't have to, or at least if they're going to go through it because that's how God has prepared them, that they have someone who can help them, who can be there to guide them along. And so it's a very easy transition because that's kind of how I saw my mentors. They were just brilliant in being like, I'm really no better than you. I've just learned some things.
Just a little farther along. Yeah, I love that.
That takes a ton of maturity, and especially being like a highly driven person, success oriented. And so how did you get to that spot where you feel like even when you're in a spot like where you're mentoring somebody, you can feel the pressure to not be perfect? Because I think a lot of people are there where they're like, I want to help somebody grow, but how can I do that if I'm not perfect?
Well, again, that's the thing too about people so easily disqualify themselves from leadership or from being in a place of influence because they think they have to be perfect and they think that people are looking for them because of their status. But the reality is that as a mentor, you want it to feel accessible to the people you're bringing up. Like where I am, you can easily get to, you can even get past me. And if they don't see your failures or see where you struggle, it just becomes an error. It becomes something that's aspirational, but not really something people can inspire to get to. And so I find it, I want to encourage everybody, in that way, to be an open book and bring someone alongside you, and don't disqualify yourself because you got issues. Everybody got issues. And that's the reality, is that, the stories in the Bible that I'm drawn to, these people had issues, and God met them. And again, we always look at their breakthrough or where they are afterwards, but like, we don't forget, everybody we look in the Bible, their stories are exposed to us. We get to see all of their mess, and yet we don't live that way in society and culture. But that's how we grow. That's why we love the people in the Bible, because we see ourselves in them. And
that level of transparency, vulnerability.
Yeah.
I know. I love what you just said. I think that's so key. Is I'm not here to make you me. I'm here to make you better than me.
Yes.
And that's really hard. I mean, I had this very, very vivid moment when I was growing up of my father, a 6-year-old kid, and I'm like, Dad, I'm looking up, and like, your dad is like basically the functional equivalent of God. And you're like, Dad, one day I'm going to be bigger and stronger than you. And, it's the most outlandish thing I could think to say. And he says, no, Dad, I don't want that. I said, I want you to be, or he said, good, that's what I'm training you for. And that just struck me. So I didn't even believe what I had said. And then he's like, wow, my dad wants me to be bigger and stronger than him. And that I hadn't even envisioned that as possible. So as a mentor, that's the heart, is saying, like, I think one of the leadership podcasts we all listen to is helping you go further, faster.
Yes.
Is that's my role. I've made my mistakes. I've had those bumps in the road so that you can have a smooth road, if you will be wise and just actually learn from me.
Yes. So good, Bill.
Yeah. So Charles, he wants to ask you about his favorite subject, marriage.
I don't.
You kind of glanced over the fact that you got married, so what's Charles, what are your questions about?
First of all, just
this is my favorite topic with Charles.
This is all we talk about.
I've never met someone who's less shy to talk about all the ins and outs. So go ahead, Charles.
Let's just take us a walkthrough. How did you meet your wife? What was that experience like? How did you know she was the one that you should pursue?
Yeah.
What was Dave? Was it Dave telling you in your ear? Just walk us through that process.
Well, first of all, we're not going to ignore that Billy left his laptop.
I know. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah. It's all good. He knows I was going to do it. He knew. But
love it.
But just real. I mean, I'll make it fast for everybody. But Elizabeth and I were, best friends even before we got married and before we started dating. And it was one of those situations where we were like, that's my sister. We'll never date, and we would talk to each other and go out on friend dates and talk about the people that we were dating. And it was very strange. But that's, so she saw me like a brother, and she's very guarded, and thank the Lord that she is. I call her my treasure, because I got to see parts of her heart and who she was as a person that no other man got to see because of how guarded she was. But for me, that meant even when I was just a friend, I didn't get to see. So I didn't really think of her in that light until David Estes.
He's like, what up?
Yeah, I had just broken up with my girlfriend before, and I was like, hey, I'm getting ready to move to London.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah, but just fully like this, because of where I was in my career, it was that was an option for me. And I remember being on his couch, and this is one of those marked moments. Again,
marked moments.
Title of this podcast:
Don't be stupid.
Oh my goodness. But it was one of those moments where he said, hey, what about Elizabeth? And I was like, Liz, what? No, I don't want to mess up that relationship. That's my friend, and no, and she doesn't think me that way. And he just very eloquently but simply said, if you're gonna marry someone else, your relationship is gonna change regardless. I think I've told you this story before. Yeah. And he's very simply said, your story could either be that you pursued your best friend and you fell in love with your best friend, and that's your story. Or your story could be you met somebody else and your best friend is no longer your best friend. It's like, it could be one of those two. Yeah. And literally, he was like, just, don't be stupid and pray. And, seek, but I'm just trying to tell you right now, be rooted somewhere. ask God, where does he want to plant you so that you can really be the person that you're supposed to be. And it was all that in combination. And literally that next Sunday, I'm gonna tell you, Elizabeth will laugh if she ever hears this. My wife's white, and I don't know what it was. It was something different. She was a blonde for a long time. Billy remembers this. She was blonde most of our friendship. That next week, she goes dark brunette. She has piercing blue eyes. She goes dark brunette, and I go, I see her. I was like, I see her completely different. It was just like all of a sudden, I saw different. I was like, oh my gosh, I like Liz. This is weird. What? I like Liz. It was like instantly. And I was like, this is crazy. And so we go on this really long road that Elizabeth and I fight about who pursued who and whatever, and how long did I wait and all this stuff. But all led to
for the next time you're on.
Yes, all led to us, falling in love and getting married, and me getting to discover my treasure. So.
And this is why you can't have best friends of the opposite sex. That is 110% bogus. There's no such thing. It's a lie.
No, well, I will say,
that is
okay,
not true.
This is for most men, this is very true. I know this is hot take. You're the man of hot take. I'm just gonna put it out there because I think culturally there are some things that are different sometimes when it comes to like just how Black people are in villages. There is some bro cis things that can happen they're and I don't ever see it culturally anywhere else or with any other ethnicity the way it works. And so it would be weird for me to see Liz. I know this sounds crazy. It's something like if you were like, oh, I'm just talking to Billy on the phone, it'd be weird. Yeah. But if I talk to my sis Tiff all the time, and Liz be like, oh, hey Tiff, what's going on, girl? Whatever. It's like, but it's just a way.
Totally.
I don't know. It's weird. I don't know. We can erase that.
I'm never.
No.
Don't worry. We're gonna have you on for a part 2, and we're gonna have to make you explain everything piece by piece.
It's true. It's such a weird. It's a weird dynamic. But I will say, I agree with you. I agree that at some point it will evolve. If you're looking to get married, there's no way for you, and it does take a lot to maintain boundaries. And it takes a strong woman. I would say Elizabeth was amazing at that, of staying guarded emotionally in our friendship. Though we were close and, we worked together in ministry and everything like that, there's parts of her that she didn't relinquish in our friendship, that she didn't let me see. And so I just want kudos to her for being a woman of virtue.
Totally, yeah. If I've seen it go sideways, it's most of the time because the girl has secret feelings. Because you have an emotional connection, and that's what means the most to her.
And then
the guy is just dumb.
Yeah.
A pile of rocks. Yeah. He's like, no, we're just friends.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're not.
No, you're not. You don't even realize.
Not in her.
Yeah.
I've had that conversation with Charles.
Where you look people in the face and you're like, listen, don't be stupid.
A lot of my best friends.
Exactly.
A lot of my best friends are female. Like, that's just what it is.
You're a thirst trap, Charles. Moving on.
I'm not a thirst trap. I'm not trapping.
Let's not make this about you. Okay?
Yes, it's true. Yes.
Part 2, we're gonna have an intervention after Jeremy lays it all out for us. But man, you've mentioned, so you can't just leave us hanging about moving to London. So take us back to career and what was your trajectory, best case scenario in your career? Ready, set, go. Here we come. College and onward to London.
Wow.
Because you're not in your profession anymore, and that's a big shift.
That's a big shift.
And we want to talk about that too.
Guys, something crazy. I went to college thinking I was going to be a doctor.
Okay.
Dime
a dozen.
Really fun fact, on my graduation day, my graduation party, when I graduated from college, my grandmom literally said, and I don't care if she hears this either, she literally says, well, I thought you were going to be a doctor, but congrats. That was her like speech.
So funny.
Yeah. And so my uncle did the same thing too. And so it was like a big deal because that was all I wanted my whole life. Everyone thought I was going to be a doctor. And then I went to college and I was like, I don't want to be a doctor. I want to be like some CEO of some company, and I was gonna, maybe I'd be a doctor and then get my MBA at the same time.
MBA.
And I went on scholarship to UNC Chapel Hill. Shout out to the Tar Heels, and And I, of course, because of my scholarship, I was in the honors program. And of course, every other kid who's going to Keenan Flagler, which is the business school at UNC, is in Econ 101. There's 300, 400 students in the class. And of course, my honors econ class had like 8 students in it my freshman year. And I got my first D ever in life. Like,
Wow.
ever. Like, I didn't even got a C before. And then I went straight to like D in first year in college. And I mean, it was hard. It was a hard thing.
Take that L.
And it did. And I was like, I don't want my MBA. I don't care about that. But then when I started in honors calc 3, when I first went into college, and I excelled in math, and I'm like, okay, maybe there's a program. Literally, there's a program called Mathematical Decision Sciences that was in the business school. It's basically operations research, analysis, statistical engineering. Shout out to my engineers in the building.
Hey.
And I went full force down that path. And then I also got a degree in African American Studies, and which is a whole nother podcast, whole nother situation. But
Part 3.
yeah, yeah. And so when I left school, I was looking for. I thought I was gonna be an actuary for a while. I took my first.
What was your actual degree?
My degree is in mathematical decision sciences. So operations research is a track. You can be operations research, actuarial science, or statistics, and that's what I did. But basically, I still took my first actuarial exam, and I had an actuarial mentor in college, and that's what I thought I was going to be. And then I got my first internship in New York City as in marketing analytics for Liz Claiborne, and it was the first time I've ever heard of like retail as a business, other than like everybody thinks of fashion, but they don't realize that there's no fashion without business, without someone coming up with like plans and margin control
Clearly
and analysis.
And
it was for me, because I think people automatically think, oh, Jeremy's a creative, but I mean, I am more analytical than I am creative, or maybe there's a mixture of the two.
Yeah, you're pretty heavy on both.
And it was the job that I found that was, man, it's the best of both worlds. And it became this career path that kind of took me into the buying world. And I started out as assistant buyer at Five Below after my internship in New York. And then and I moved here pretty quickly, went to associate buyer there. And then I got a job at Urban Outfitters Inc. and I was at Anthropologie, running e-commerce home for a while. I mean, it literally just kept climbing. And that was a hard place. And also another topic, being, a Black male in a place that's predominantly, I was the only Black person in the whole Anthropologie building, and also with people under me, and it was a big thing, but it was also, I realized that this is what the Lord's fact. I knew that growing up. I knew that it's part of me. Like, I'm gonna be a leader. I'm gonna be someone that's gonna keep pushing forward in the needle. And I love my career, and I'm smart, man. I was killing it. I love my career. I could, I thought I was going to end up being the head of some retail company by the time I was 35. And I felt like I was on my way. And I ended up, and I had a couple other jobs after that, trying to manage a few businesses and different companies, and I ended up running in cosmetics and fragrances for Saks Fifth Avenue in New York for a few years when I first got married. So I was commuting to New York from here, and it was luxury retail. It's hard to get into. It was the pinnacle of my career, and I was excelling. And I'm like, okay, this is it.
Next step after New York.
No, I mean,
it's got to be London.
So London,
and then Dubai.
So London was before New York. London was with Anthropologie, and that's to circle back. That was before I left there. Whole nother topic, but that was me being a part of a company who was expanding into Europe and opening a store on Regent Street. And so I was helping out there, and I thought that's where I was going to be going. But I left that company because my identity was really tied up in just the brand. There was something attached to it that was, if you told someone, hey, I work for anthropology. Someone saw something in the home goods part of, Anthro, and they're like, and I'm like, yeah, I, helped buy that. And I, was part of, the process. They're like, oh my gosh, can you give me a discount? Or what else are you bringing home? And,
I designed that.
And it was it was a part it became an idol in my life. And it was a big moment for me. The Lord shifted me out of that space because I had to obey him. I had to basically say, Lord, I choose you over this job. And
wait, question. So was there like a specific moment that you remember that it's like basically follow God or go where I want to learn?
I mean, I was feeling the grace lift basically. And there was some tensions that were happening that I'm still kind of wrestling through, whether or not there were some things I felt like that were happening racially, and some things that were affecting me because I was the only Black person in the company. And it was a big shift for me in the moment of I was trying to stay. I was struggling because it was such a part of my identity. And I remember Liz and I were taking the weekend she was going to meet my family for the first time. And I was like, when I come back, I think I'm going to give my 2 weeks notice. I'm going to see what they say, and basically that was the big moment. I felt when I left, I'm like, I just feel like the Lord is saying, hey, when you come back, you got to give you 2 weeks notice. And it was a big moment for me because I'm like, Lord, I can't give this up. I don't have a job after this. And he goes, choose me. You need to choose me. This job is an idol. And I was like, I would rather be homeless on the street than have forsaken God.
Yeah.
And so that was, but that's not what God had for me. He literally had a job after like literally I put my 2 weeks in and my boss was like, today's your last day. And I was like, man, after like
fired you on the spot.
Like after, I mean, yeah, basically. I mean, you can call it firing or just like, well then I don't want to take your notice.
You want to go? Go.
Yeah. But it's essentially, it was everything that you thought you worked for and that you thought you had value in, just like that, is gone. And I remember being like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But literally 3 days later, I had like 4 job offers that were like 40% higher of pay and everything. That was people were asking me, they're like, hey, can you come run this division of our company?
Yeah.
And so.
And that's when you ended up in New York.
Yeah. No, it's not right in New York. I know it's a crazy story. I know. Okay. I ended up with being a company that I was running a division that they were trying to save the company basically.
Yeah.
And the company ended up folding. And it was in that time that I took a job. It was like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do now because I'm here, but they're literally paying us to come to work and job hunt. They were helping us because the company was shutting down. And so it was, okay, I think I'm going to take the leap. If I'm going to really be in this industry, I'm really going to make it. And achievement, competition. I'm like, I'm going to make it where retail is. And so I just started looking, and then they kept telling me, you don't have any luxury retail experience. And I was like, bet. Okay. Now
I have to do it.
Now I have to do it. But what was crazy for me is going to my last interview. It was like 6 interviews in the process. And I got to the top. It's like, now you need to go to the 19th floor and meet the CEO. And I remember going up to meet the CFO, and who basically ran all of the divisions. And I came into the boardroom, and it was a Black man. And he looked at me, and I mean, because I hadn't had this experience yet, and he looked at me. He didn't know I was Black because, I mean, my name's Jeremy Moore. Like, no one thinks I'm Black until they see me. But he looked at me, and he was just like, wow. He was like, this is a fresh face. And it was one of those moments where we had a candid conversation about, how hard it is to have diversity in the retail industry, and like, basically we need you. And yeah, so that was that moment. I'm like, I love how God led me from this place of this is an idol in your life to I'm setting you up for greater influence. And so just by obeying him. And I always tell people, and I tell Charles this all the time too, like, you never know what's on the other side of obedience until you obey.
And so that's the job you left to become a pastor.
No.
It gets better.
It does because I left.
You're ruining my sound clips here.
I know. This is so great. This is so great because this job was also one of those identity jobs, who doesn't want to say that they are running an office for Saks Fifth Avenue and, going to, I don't know, but I know Charles
It's a
gets
big
that.
deal.
It's a big deal. It's like,
I get it.
I'm going to Chanel today. I'm going, so I'm coming home. Liz loved it. Liz
every day you're name dropping.
Yes, name drop, I get to work
no big deal.
fresh suit every day. It was great. I loved it. But the biggest thing for, was we were expecting our first child, and I was commuting to New York. It's easy when Liz is teaching and I can do the hour and a half commute because we were living in Mount Laurel when we first got in Mount Laurel, New Jersey when we first got married, and so I was doing the hour 20 bus ride to New York City every day back and forth. So long days, but we could do it. We were young and it was a big career moment. And so for us, when we were pregnant with Luciana, it was one of those moments of, are we going to move to New York? Are we going to leave Philadelphia? And it was on the table, and it just felt like the Lord saying no, but I need to choose my family. And so wherever Liz wanted to be, that's where I was going to choose to live. And so I remember leaving, going to the deli on 48th and Madison, and going to my LinkedIn and just like turning it on, or basically like updating it. I forgot what I did, but I had an old VP who left Saks like a month before to come to a job here where like Lane Bryant is and Ben Salem and everything, and she became the VP here, and she couldn't hire me, but she saw that I opened up my LinkedIn, and she wrote me and was like, hey, I remember you telling me you were from, this area. I'm here now because she moved down here because she had 3 kids and she didn't want to be doing the commute anymore. So she took this job. She was like, I need bench strength. I don't even have a job opening right now, but I can get my boss, the CFO, to create a job for you if you are interested. Right. And I'm like,
maybe.
All I did was say, God, I choose Liz over this job, and I just felt like and I'm gonna obey, and I'm gonna start looking. And he was like, Lord's like, you don't have to. I was just looking for you to say yes to me, and and literally had a job kind of created for me, great pay. I didn't have to take a reduction in pay, and I was here, and that was a big shift for me because it allowed me, because I moved into like the plus size fashion industry, which is. Obviously, I'm not a plus size woman. Shout out to all my full figure ladies out there. But I didn't have an identity associated with it. So I could go in to work and be like, here's our sales plans for the next 3 years. Here's what I want to do. I don't want to do this line. I don't know. We can't do red next year. We can't do sweaters. Sweaters are downtrending. When we do, I can go in and do my job and then come home, and which honestly allowed me to fall into ministry. I don't want to jump in front of you, but that's That's basically what happened.
Yeah.
That's a long road. Yeah.
Well, no. I mean, I think that's like, it's just, one career or one job change after another.
Yeah.
And our line is, we really believe if you find your why, you'll find your way.
Yeah.
So your purpose is what guides you in the minuscule decisions of every day, and then the massive ones of job changes, who to marry, all these things. So purpose is at the center. So we can hear that major theme developing. It all centers around your relationship with God, because it seems like you are responding to the call of God to say, hey, I'm your man. I'm in no matter what in means. And that has meant you leave jobs at certain times, do other things. So from your perspective then, to make a massive leap where you lose status, I'm sure the church is not paying you the same as some major New York or
fashion discounts.
Right. So you in the world's eyes, you take a status cut, you take a pay cut, and I don't know the ins and outs of that, but I just have to assume. And so all these things, you're going backwards, but you're still following your purpose. So what did it look like for you then through that lens of purpose to make that decision?
I mean, honestly, I had been making it.
Yeah.
all along. So it didn't feel like a big leap. You know, I heard the naysayers and the people telling me I'm crazy since Urban. You know, and even Five Below, it was before it was public, but it was like I knew all these things where God was like, go here. Now it's time to go here. And so when I got to this point of, you know, being at this company in Bensalem and sitting down with Gabe and him saying, hey man, so you know, classic Gabe. You know, we had multiple conversations about what it would look like to be on ministry, but I had been spending more time just like helping out with the church and investing my time and it just wasn't a big leap. I just felt this tug, and I hadn't felt the tug for full-time ministry in that way before. I always felt like I want to give more to the church. I want to, you know, and even when I was traveling to New York, I would like run and catch to train. I would drive into the city to Philly, leave my car and take the Amtrak from New York just so I can come and lead rehearsals for worship in the city. Like that's how committed to this church I was. And so being in this space where I was feeling that tug, it was very easy for me to say, God, I've been following you this whole time and you haven't let me down, you know, and every step of the way. And it's my own motto. And that's why I say it all the time. It's like, well, I don't know what's on the other side of this, but I'm going to obey. Every time you've always met me and you've never let me down. And it's always been greater than I thought it would be. And so when we sat down that time, we were at Groove Ground in Collingswood, and we were just kind of chatting back and forth with each other. And I literally felt God say, just tell Gabe yes when he asked. And I didn't know he was going to ask me.
Before you knew what the question was?
Yeah, I mean, I always knew Gabe was going to ask me whenever we met. But when he was like, so what are you thinking, man, about, you know, full-time ministry? And I came up and I was like, I think it's a yes. I think it's yes. Yeah. I hadn't even talked to Liz yet. It was just like,
so I quit my job today.
Yeah. I did it, but it was a faith challenge for me to say. It was March of 2016, and at that time I was like, I think by October I'll be ready. I didn't know what October meant. I just felt like I'm gonna give it 6-7 months. I'm gonna just put a time on the calendar and say, God, help me meet this, you know. And then of course I had to go tell Liz. Yeah. But it's amazing because, you know, I'm taking a massive pay cut, not just a massive pay cut, but a reduction in pay capacity. You know, I'm like on the track to VP and
entire trajectory change.
I mean, I saw it. I see my bosses. I know how they live, and I'm thinking to myself like, okay, I'm getting there. Yeah. And the Lord's like, no, you're not. You're going to full-time ministry. I'm like, ugh. Yeah. But Liz, on the other hand, she decided she wanted to work. And it was just one of those things like, okay, I think this, and her response was, I think this could work because I think some of the loss that we're going to experience from your pay, I'm going to offset. So I think you should do what the Lord's telling you to do. And I was like, okay, well, I already say yes anyway, so
can't take it back now.
We're already committed, yeah.
But we went down this path, and we were like, oh my gosh, I think do we want to buy a house before we, you know, I literally, and then we found out, oh my gosh, we're pregnant with Farrah. And it was like, okay, this is great. Let's have a baby, buy a house, and change jobs and take a massive pay cut all in the span of 6 months. All because I said yes to God. But the way that the Lord met us in those 6 months, and literally, you know, September 16, 2016, we closed on a house. September 19th, I gave my 3 weeks notice. Again, naysayers, are you crazy? What are you doing? I'm going into ministry. And my boss was telling people that I was going to be creative director for a nonprofit because she felt better about it. You know, being it's
a nonprofit.
All the shade from people.
Right?
Oh gosh.
Wait,
I'm
what?
like, save me your pity. Just say you don't get it.
Are you sure you want this? You know you were on track for this. I'm like, I know. It doesn't make sense to you. Yeah. It won't make sense to you, but this is what I'm called to do. And so, and I kept struggling with it. But one of the things that Gabe Gabe had a big talk with me about, and I think this is important, is it's okay to mourn. Understand what you're losing.
Yeah.
And mourn that. And what the blessing about really grieving and mourning something that you're losing is that God meets you in the middle of it. And so I had a lot of times of, God, I don't keep laying this back down. But that sense of loss of this career I thought I was going to have, and the way he met me and sort of just washed over me with his promises and how he was going to provide for our family. They were the things that still sustain me to this day, you know. But it's so interesting because we haven't wanted for anything. And we haven't lacked, you know, and you know, I still drip, you know what I'm saying?
Still fly, still fresh. Come on.
Yeah, so it's been awesome.
I love that, man. Just the fact that God called you into something that was totally opposite of even what you thought or what the world thinks you should be doing.
Yeah.
And you haven't been wanting for anything since you said yes to him.
Seriously.
That's just
and
beautiful.
And also that he's used every part of my experience in terms of organization, how I've led teams, how, you know, presentation, all those things. He's taken all of that, and I've been able to bring that to this space, which I feel like has been such an added asset to what we already have as a great team on staff here. So it's been great.
It's almost like you were learning those things to use it here.
Exactly. I agree 100%.
Awesome. Well, Jeremy, we kind of end with one big question.
Oh boy.
And you know, because we're trying to help other people grow in their journey as men. So our wild question is what we call it. And since you're our first guest, I can't say we ask this to every guest. We're gonna ask it to you. So.
I know it's got okay. All right, cool.
So when did you know that you became a man?
Wow, man, that's a good question. All right, I'm gonna try not to be long-winded here, but it takes me back to the conversation actually we were having earlier. I think for me, I still feel like I'm becoming a man. So it's a very interesting conversation to have, a discussion to have about when did I know I became a man. I feel like I realized that I was evolving into manhood and walking into it when I became a son. I know that sounds like a cop-out, but for me, just understanding what it means to be a son who has a daddy to look to, and has mentors to look to that are showing him the way to true manhood, and me being receptive to that and being in a place of just accountability, not running from authority, and which was a huge thing for a broken man, a broken boy who didn't know what it meant to be a man or to have a father in his life. And so I ran from authority. But when I got some healing and I understood that I was a son, that God loved me, that he was pleased with me, with who I was as his chosen. And I was able to walk into some real, whoever I'm supposed to be, it's going to evolve itself into a man. So there wasn't like this preconceived notion of what manhood should be. It was more, you're my son, now let me mature you. And so once I got to that place, I felt like, you know, but it took healing. I mean, if you want to know, I've had marked moments of healing, of seeking healing from some of the wounds I've had from the loss of my father, from the loss of my fathers in life, and just really wrestling through some inner healing. And once I got to these places, I had a very great prophetic moment that happened at Freedom Church when we were meeting at the movie theater. That's where you came along, right? At the movie theater in Columbus. But I remember Pastor David Houston called me up to the front, and in a moment of prayer, and it was weird, I walked up and he just looked at me. He was like, I feel like God wants me to tell you that you are his son and he's so pleased with you. And nobody knows the years of God, am I doing this right? Am I following you? I can't hear you. I don't know if I'm on the right track. I'm giving up. You know, it's like the woman with the issue of blood. You know, it's like we love her story and where she touches a hem, but it's like she had 12 years of this, what she was going through. And I was like, that was me. Like, he didn't even know when he called me up what I was going through. And that was my moment. I said, okay, now I'm in the middle of the crowd. Now I'm here and I'm in, and I can either say, yes, hug me. Yes, reach out. Yes, speak to me in front of all these people about all my issues. That's great. Or, I could say no, and not be receptive. But it was this time I was like, this is God confirming, Jeremy, you're on the path. I see you. I know you. I'm proud of you. And that for me, I would say if there was any one defining moment, that was for me the start of my manhood journey, truly, where I started being like, I am a son. He's chosen me. He's okay with who I am. That I don't look like every other. I don't, play football or even watch a lot of football. I don't do all the things that stereotypical man do. But God's like, you are my son, and I'm gonna fashion you into a mature man that will have a sphere of influence that other men will follow. And that just felt like that was my moment. That like, I'm okay who I am. Like, who I am is good. I'm not my dad. I'm not, I don't have to live in the shadow that my brother is like him and I'm not. I don't have to live in the shadow that my family doesn't understand me. God does. He sees me. He knows me. And so the man you see today, the secure man of who I am, and is really coming out of that moment being like, okay, now I can receive correction. Now I can respond to the authority figures in my life in the right way. And because I'm being molded into who God wants me to be, and not some, world image of manhood. And so,
how old were you then?
Bro, I was 20. What was it? Before I dated Liz, so I was 26. Yeah, I was 26. Yeah.
If you had to go back then and just think of your 18-year-old self before you go to UNC, before now knowing what you know now, you were gonna look 18-year-old Jeremy eyeball to eyeball and give him a couple minutes of advice. What would you say to him? Shoot straight, like give him the don't be stupid talk.
I know. Well, I definitely tell him don't be stupid.
Don't be stupid.
I would, man. Gosh, that's a really great question, Billy. And I'm trying not to be too deep with it, but I just believe that one of the biggest things I learned was trying to figure out who you are identity-wise outside of God. It's just oppression. And I'm reminded of like the Legion, the demon-possessed man, and a lot of people think of that as like, and this is what I'm talking to myself. So this is, when you hear me kind of talking around about, this is probably how I talk to my 18-year-old self. And I say, hey, you remember this story in the Bible of this man who's possessed with legion of demons, because many had possessed him. And how they would chain him, which to me is symbolic of like just the world and what that looks like. But then he would break free and run out into the wilderness and hide in isolation. And that's how I felt like when I was in college, trying to figure out who I was. But my demons were like shame and insecurity and anxiety and fear of failure. And they just had me bound and, man approval, and and I would say, do not let yourself be chained in a cave with these demons. Do not let shame attach itself to you. Do not, that's fine. I mean, gosh, I wish that moment when I was 26 would happen when I was 18. It's like, you're enough. You're okay. Let Jesus meet you. And yeah, this is a really powerful moment for me, even saying it now, because it would have been such a different 4 years of college had I not struggled to try to find who I was, or try to be some version of who my campus pastors wanted me to be, or which they were great and they were well-meaning, but I was struggling with a lot. So if you mess up now you're like, I feel like I'm in a cave. I'm isolated because I'm ashamed of who I am, and now I'm depressed and I'm insecure, and so I became a shell of who you see here. And I would challenge I would challenge him, go run after Jesus, let him mark your identity and figure out who you are. Don't try to figure it out on your own. You will not, and you will ruin yourself. Hope that made sense. It made sense in my head when it came out, but
Absolutely.
I'm
It
just
makes
kind of
sense.
shooting straight. Like that was
Yeah.
college is messy. You're a campus missionary, you've been, sir. It's messy, man. It's messy.
And it's, if when we commit that mess to Jesus, then he makes sense of it. He sets us free.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. And I think that, just to kind of bring it together, it's like when we are connected with God, we find a purpose that transcends everything.
Yeah.
And that is that through line of our lives.
Yeah.
Is that an eternal purpose, the purpose of God, of relating to him, of knowing him, of being his son. And then what that looks like in all the minutia of life, it just plays itself out.
So
where we
good.
can trust him, we can be guided by him, we can be led by him, and we can be free to simply be the man he's made us to be.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. Charles, any questions you want to ask before we?
I don't have any questions, man. Just want to say thank you. Thank you for just coming here, sharing your story personally, for just the example that you are. I'm gonna just leave it. You're a great person, man. And
thanks,
I
Charles.
appreciate you.
You're
and
great,
I love
man.
you. I love you
Love you too,
deeply.
bro. Love you too, man.
Yeah.
This is very encouraging. You guys are awesome.
No, you're the best. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Wild Way Podcast. If you enjoyed it, give us a like, subscribe, comment below, or share with a friend. Thanks, guys.